TrueStory Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot.
Today,
TrueStory Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. Emma Hayes flipped on the soft, diffused light above her compact workbench and adjusted the angle of her webcam. The rented studio apartment she'd converted into a tiny pottery showroom smelled faintly of kiln-fired clay and eucalyptus oil from the diffuser in the corner. At 32, Emma had already lived 3 very different lives. A bright-eyed editorial assistant at Chicago's trendiest lifestyle magazine, a hopeful newlywed, and now, a single mother determined to carve out her own future, one handcrafted vase at a time. Across the room, a shelf held a dozen of her signature pieces. Delicate porcelain vases glazed in misty gray with speckles of cobalt, each one unique. Emma's reflection in the screen confirmed that her tousled brunette hair and warm hazel eyes were camera-ready. But she also saw the faint shadows beneath her eyes, the scars of sleepless nights spent caring for her son, Jackson. "Okay," she whispered to herself, typing a friendly greeting. "Let's make today a good one." 10-year-old characters carried weight in fairy tales. In Emma's world, Jack was her entire universe. At 6, he was small for his age, but fierce in spirit. He'd been diagnosed with early-stage kidney disease when he was just 2, necessitating monthly rounds of dialysis at Mercy General Hospital. Emma could still remember the frantic phone call from the pediatrician that day, a shock that sent her freelance editorial career spiraling. It was the moment she decided to trade her desk job for a wheel and kiln, so she could earn enough to keep Jack healthy and happy without relying on anyone else. She gave the live stream a quick once-over. The background was clean, a simple white wall hung with 2 framed prints of Chicago's skyline. A potted fern in the corner lent a whisper of life, while her camera captured the rich texture of the handmade ceramic pieces she'd laid out in neat rows on a reclaimed wood table. Beneath her professional veneer, Emma felt a thrill of pride. This was her creation, her hustle, her chance to prove that she wasn't just the ex-wife, or that single mom with a sick kid. She was Emma Hayes, maker of beautiful, functional art. The apartment's front door clicked, and she heard Jack's tiny footsteps. He bounded in, a bundle of energy wearing his favorite vintage star-printed sweatshirt, one of Emma's thrift store finds she'd upcycled. His cheeks were rosy from the crisp November air as he dropped his backpack by the door. "Mom, I got gold stars in spelling today," he announced breathlessly. Emma paused her broadcast to sweep him into a quick hug, careful not to knock over the display. "That's amazing, Jack. Spelling stars and pottery stars. Mom's so proud." He beamed at the camera, unaware of the toll his illness took, and Emma handed him a small glazed mug shaped like a ginkgo leaf. "Here, you told me you needed a new cup for your hot chocolate." Jack grasped it with both hands, his eyes wide. As he settled onto a stool, Emma pressed a button to resume the stream. Her followers saw the 2 of them, the ceramicist and her son, at work. She launched into her opening spiel. "Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Hayes Home Goods, where every piece tells a story. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to my new Autumn Breeze collection. Inspired by the way the light filters through the trees in Lincoln Park this time of year." Behind her, Chicago's winter gray sky peeked through the window. She described each piece with the enthusiasm of a storyteller, the way the glaze pooled along the rims to mimic fallen leaves, the tactile grooves that felt like the rings of an old maple trunk. Jack chimed in with his own 2 cents. "I like the orange one, Mom." And the chat lit up with heart emojis and words of encouragement. But beneath the warm camaraderie, Emma's mind never strayed far from the business realities. Monthly rent, the cost of dialysis treatments, the looming holiday season push she needed to make to hit her next sales target. In a few hours, she would close this stream and head downtown with Jack for his routine checkup. Every sale counted, but so did every prayer for his health. Halfway through, Emma paused to read a comment. "Where do you get your clay?" she asked. "Our studio clay comes from a family-run supplier in Lake Forest. I love supporting local, just like I'm proud to support my local schools for Jack's education." Her tone struck the perfect balance of professional artisan and devoted mom. And the view count climbed steadily. Emma paused again to smooth a stray lock of hair from her face. The live stream's soft glow reflected in her eyes, and she allowed herself a brief moment to appreciate how far she'd come. 1 year ago, she would never have believed she could juggle motherhood, a home business, and maintain a spark of hope. But here she was, crafting beauty from raw earth, forging a future for Jack with her own 2 hands. As the stream wound down, Emma leaned forward, her voice warm and earnest. "Thank you all for tuning in today. Every piece you support helps me keep this dream alive, so I can keep Jack healthy, happy, and thriving. And don't forget, orders placed by Sunday get free holiday gift wrapping." Jack waved goodbye, clutching his new mug like a prize trophy. When she finally clicked end broadcast, Emma exhaled, her smile turning soft. She logged off, closed the laptop gently, and scooped Jack into her arms. "Let's go, kiddo. Time for that appointment." Outside, the wind nudged the city's skyscrapers as if to urge her onward. Emma gripped Jack's hand and pushed open the door, ready to face whatever came next, because she was Emma Hayes. And her story was only just beginning. The sun had barely crested the horizon when Emma parked her Subaru in front of Riverside Elementary. The red brick facade glowed pale gold in the November light. But Emma's heart thundered so loudly she could barely register the morning chill. She gripped Jack's small hand as they stepped into the cold hallway. The echo of little footsteps and slamming locker doors filling the foyer with early morning energy. Jack hesitated by the front desk, jiggling his backpack straps. "Mom," he said, voice small. I don't want anyone to know about my medicines." Emma ruffled his hair. "No one needs to know, sweetheart. Just you and me and Dr. Patel at Mercy General." "Got it." He nodded, cheeks flushing. Emma offered a reassuring smile to the receptionist, then guided Jack toward his classroom door. She knocked once, gently, and peeked in. A colorful mural of the solar system spanned one wall. Rainbow-colored desks were arranged in neat rows. Ms. Franklin, a kind-faced third-grade teacher, looked up from her desk. "Good morning, Miss Franklin," Emma said quietly. "Jack had a rough night, kidney ache, again, so if he seems tired, I'll be right next door." "Of course," Ms. Franklin replied with a sympathetic nod. "He did fine yesterday." Jack managed a small wave. Emma leaned down and kissed his temple. "You've got this. I'll be right here." She slipped out into the hallway, heart pounding. The moment she reached the stairwell, her phone buzzed, a stream notification from her live stream channel. She ignored it, pressing the wall-mounted elevator button with trembling fingers. Upstairs, she found a narrow office where parents were expected to wait for forgotten lunches or last-minute forms. Emma sank onto a vinyl chair, hands clasped around her coffee mug. 5 minutes later, her phone vibrated in her pocket. She glanced down. It was a text from Miss Franklin. "Jack needed me at recess. Team called him dialysis baby. He's upset. Can you come now?" Emma's breath caught in her throat. Dialysis baby. The words sliced through her confidence. She bolted from the chair and hurried down the stairs, nearly colliding with a second-grade girl carrying a stack of folders. Bursting into the recess yard, Emma froze. The playground was a swirl of colored jackets and laughter. But in the middle of the asphalt court, Jack hunched his shoulders, head bowed. A small cluster of third-graders circled him, pointing and giggling. "You heard Mrs. Reed," one boy jeered. "Her mom does dialysis, so you're all tubes and sickness. Dialysis baby." Jack's face crumpled. He scrubbed at his eyes, as if he could wipe away her mother's private medical nightmare. Emma's chest tightened, and something snapped, a fierce protectiveness, so sudden it stunned her to silence. "Jack," she roared, voice shattering the frothy laughter. All heads turned. Emma strode forward, eyes blazing. "What's going on here?" Instantly, The ring of children broke, and they scattered like startled birds. Jack looked up, tears pooled in his lashes. Emma crouched in front of him, cupping his cheeks. "It's okay. I've got you." One of the older kids, a tall girl named Leah, tried to protest. He said it first. Emma stood and faced Leah's friends. "You may not understand what it means," she said calmly but firmly, "but making fun of someone's health? That's unkind. You will apologize to Jack right now." Leah's cheeks went pink. "I'm sorry, Jack," she muttered. Her friends joined in, less sincerely, but Jack nodded and whispered, "Thanks." A gentle tug at Emma's elbow turned her gaze to MS. Franklin, who had arrived with a concerned look. "Thank you," the teacher mouthed. Emma nodded, eyes still fierce, then turned to Jack. "Let's get you inside, okay?" In the safety of the empty hallway, Emma pressed Jack against her. He sniffled and whispered, "Mom, I don't want to go back." "I know, sweetheart." She smoothed his hair. "But we can tell them how strong you are. And if it happens again, you tell me. Deal?" He nodded, and Emma led him toward the classroom door. Before opening it, she knelt and looked him in the eye. "You're brave. You're loved. And nobody gets to call you anything but my superhero." Jack's lips curved into a small, brave smile. Emma felt tears threatening her resolve, but she blinked and stood. She opened the door with more poise than she felt. Inside, the other students returned to whispers and shuffling paper. Emma addressed them all with clear authority. "We're all different. Some kids take medicine. Some wear glasses. That's what makes us special. If you see someone in trouble, you help them, not hurt them." She swept her gaze across the room. "Understood?" A chorus of "Yes, ma'am" followed. Emma knelt before Jack's desk. "Ready for reading circle?" He nodded, wiping his eyes. Ms. Franklin gave Emma a grateful look. Emma straightened, gave Jack's shoulder a reassuring squeeze, and slipped out into the hallway to wait. In those minutes, her mind raced. The strength she needed to protect Jack, the hidden costs of his treatments, the relentless pressure to keep her small business afloat so she could afford everything from monthly copays to his cold-weather jackets. The challenges she'd face alone if Daniel ever decided to walk away for good, something she dared not consider that morning. When the final bell rang 15 minutes later, Emma was waiting by the classroom door. Jack emerged, backpack slung properly, holding the small ginkgo leaf mug from yesterday's live stream in one hand and a permission slip in the other. "Mom," he said, voice steady. "Miss Franklin said everyone's sorry, and she wants the whole class to come to my science fair." Emma's heart cracked open with pride. "That's incredible, buddy." She hugged him. "Let's sign this, get your meds, and then I'll take you for hot chocolate. How does that sound?" Jack's grin was radiant. "Best day ever." They walked out together, mother and son, shoulders squared against the November wind. Emma slipped her arm around Jack, quietly vowing that no matter who whispered cruel words, she would always be there to turn them into something else: strength, compassion, and love. And as they headed for the car, she glanced back at the school, no longer a place of humiliation but one where her son had just claimed his dignity, with a little help from the bravest person she knew. Emma sat rigidly in the vinyl chair of Northside Medical Center's outpatient corridor, heart hammering against her ribcage like a frantic drum. The muted hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and every echo of a nurse's trolley wheel sounded like a countdown. She smoothed her navy trench coat, shoulders squared, as she scanned the sterile taupe walls for any sign of Daniel or Margaret Reed. Moments ago, she'd insisted that both her ex-husband and his mother accompany her to this appointment. Emma needed proof, unassailable evidence, that Jack was, without doubt, their own blood. Daniel had grudgingly agreed, muttering about inconvenience. Margaret had refused until Emma quietly, yet firmly, reminded her this was a matter of procedure, not preference. Now, the tension coiled tighter with every passing second. A door labeled Genetics Suite swung open, and a young lab technician in scrubs beckoned them inside. "Emma Hayes?" "Daniel Reed," she confirmed, clipboard in hand. Emma rose. clenching Jack's small hand at her side. Daniel exchanged a curt nod. Margaret hovered behind him, arms folded, eyes narrowed in silent judgment. "Please follow me," the technician said, leading them down a narrow hallway lined with framed botanical prints. They arrived at a private room with a stainless steel counter, a rolling stool, and a single poster illustrating the structure of DNA. Emma swallowed, recalling how she'd once edited an article on genomics, back when her biggest worry had been a looming magazine deadline, not her son's identity. "Thank you for coming in today. I understand this is difficult," the technician began, voice gentle as she donned a pair of latex gloves. "I'll be collecting buccal swabs for all three of you. The process is quick, just a cheek swab. Are there any questions?" Margaret's lips thinned. "How long before we get results?" "Typically 2 to 3 business days," the technician replied. "We'll notify you the moment the analysis concludes." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Emma drew a steadying breath. "Let's proceed," she said firmly. The technician handed Emma a sterile swab. Emma knelt beside Jack and gently placed the swab between his cheek and gum, rotating it as he giggled at the tickle. Next, the technician repeated the process on Margaret, whose expression remained locked in scorn. Finally, Daniel held his cheek still under the swab's gentle scrape. The moment the technician sealed the samples, Emma felt a mixture of dread and exhilaration. She knew the odds, genetic science was precise, but this was more than statistics. This was her fight for Jack's dignity. "Thank you," the technician said, collecting the vials. "We'll call as soon as we have the results." They exited the suite, and Emma led her small party back into the quiet corridor lined with closed doors. She sank into a chair, tucking Jack close. He rested his head on her shoulder, wrists still warm against her palm. Margaret spoke first, voice low and icy. "You'll see. I said those rumors for everyone's good. Now you want to drag me here over, what? A tube baby." Emma inhaled slowly. "It's dialysis, baby. Mother Reed. And I want the truth for Jack's sake. Not for gossip, but for his peace of mind." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "Emma, maybe we can just drop this."
"No."
She interrupted quietly, but unmistakably. "Not this time." Margaret stood, clutching the armrest. "I have better things to do than sit around waiting on some lab results." "Then you can leave," Emma replied, eyes unwavering. "But Jack needs closure. We all do." Daniel rose, conflicted, and placed a hand on Margaret's shoulder. "Margaret, please. Let's just see this through." Margaret glared at him, then pivoted on her heel and stalked off down the hallway. Daniel and Emma watched her go. "Mom," Jack whispered, tugging her sleeve. "Are they coming back?" Emma kissed the top of his head. "Yes, sweetie. They'll be back." They waited in tense silence for another hour. The soft ding of the lab door finally sent Emma's pulse soaring. "Emma Hayes?" the technician called. She held an envelope stamped "Confidential," genetic report. Emma stood, hands trembling slightly as she took it. Daniel and Margaret followed, expressions unreadable. They stepped into the genetics suite once more, where the technician gestured toward a small table. "Here is the report. I'll step out to give you privacy. Please don't hesitate to ask if you have questions." The technician left. Emma slid the envelope open and extracted a single sheet of paper. Her breath caught as she scanned the words. "Sample comparison. Jack Hayes and Daniel Reed. 99.92% likelihood of parent-child relationship." She exhaled, the world tilting with relief. Tears pricked her eyes, not of sorrow, but of vindication. Jack was undeniably Daniel's son. Emma looked up. Daniel's expression had softened. His eyes glistened with a mix of regret and awe. Margaret re-entered, her posture defensive. Emma stepped forward, handing her the report. Margaret's gloved hand trembled as she unfolded the paper. Her eyes darted across the numbers, face paling. Margaret's voice came out in a choked whisper. This can't be." "Margaret," Daniel said quietly, "the lab is reputable. I'm sorry you doubted it." Margaret dropped the paper, folding her arms as if bracing for a blow. Emma locked eyes with her. "You owe Jack an apology," Emma said softly but firmly. "And you owe him your respect." Margaret looked away, jaw clenched. Emma reached down and gathered Jack into her arms. He buried his face against her coat, and she held him close, feeling his small body tremble with lingering hurt. In that moment, Emma realized this victory was far more than numbers on a sheet. It was the first step toward restoring her son's self-respect. She walked out of the room, Jack nestled against her, leaving Margaret and Daniel alone to grapple with the truth. The sterile corridor felt brighter, as if the truth herself had flicked on a set of invisible lights. Emma smiled down at Jack, brushing his hair back. "We did it, champ," she whispered. "They can't take this away from you." Jack looked up, eyes clear and certain. "Mom," he said, voice small but steady. "I'm your hero, right?" Emma chuckled, tears brimming. "You're the bravest person I know." Clutching her son's hand, she led him out of Northside Medical Center, one step closer to the peace they both deserved. That evening, after the harrowing DNA confirmation, Emma and Jack returned to the quiet sanctuary of her studio apartment. The once comforting shelves of porcelain now loomed as silent witnesses to the battles ahead. Jack curled up with his favorite fleece blanket on the living room love seat, fingers tracing the rim of the leaf-shaped mug he'd clutched all day. Emma set her keys on the side table, steeling herself for what she'd planned. Earlier that afternoon, she'd snooped through Margaret's purse, an act she'd never have believed she capable of, while Margaret rummaged in the kitchen for a travel mug. In the bottom lining, she'd found a tiny digital voice recorder, the kind used by journalists on the go. Emma tucked it into her camera bag, a visceral knot of anxiety and determination twisting in her chest.
Now.
As twilight seeped through the blinds, Emma retrieved her phone and positioned herself by the open door of Jack's makeshift playroom. The recorder rested discreetly between two discarded toy cars on the floor. From this vantage, she would capture exactly what Margaret said the next time she overstepped her bounds. Emma's pulse drummed in her ears as she dialed Margaret's number. Her mother-in-law picked up on the second ring. "Emma, darling," Margaret's smooth voice cooed. "I'm on my way to see Jack. I thought an early dinner might lift his." "Actually," Emma interrupted, forcing calm, "I'd love for you to come by now. He's feeling a bit down after school. Could you come over?" There was a pause. Emma held her breath. Finally, Margaret agreed with her usual clipped courtesy. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Emma opened the door wide, forcing a genial smile. Margaret swept in, hair immaculately styled, her tailored trench coat exuding a faint scent of Chanel fragrance. Emma ushered her through the living room. Jack sat at his small table, coloring with thick markers. He looked up, eyes flickering with both hope and trepidation. "Grandma," he said quietly. Margaret kissed the top of his head, but her tone remained frosty. "I got your note about dinner. I brought your favorite, beef stew from Tranquil Stew Cafe." She placed a paper bag on the table with a practiced flourish. Emma seated herself just behind the sofa cushion, phone in hand, finger poised over the record button. For the next minute, conversation flowed artificially polite. Margaret inquired about Jack's day. Jack mumbled that he'd gotten stars in spelling, and Emma quietly encouraged him. Then, sensing vulnerability, Margaret's mask slipped. "You know," she said, her voice lowering to a pernicious whisper, "I spoke with Mrs. Graham down the hall. She told me the other children keep asking why you're always sick. They say you look pale, and that your mother is probably too busy with her little pottery show to take proper care of you." Jack's coloring hand froze. His head dropped. Emma's breath caught. Margaret pressed on. "Honey, it's not your fault. Your poor mother has her hands full with those, what did she call them? Dialysis mugs or something?" She scoffed. Honestly, poor Emma. She'd have been better off sticking to editing fashion spreads. The recorder, nestled in the toys, whirred silently, and Emma did nothing but clutch her phone tighter, tears pricking her eyes. Jack blinked up at Margaret, cheeks reddening. "Grandma, please don't say that." "Oh, sweetheart, I just want you to know how difficult it must be for your mother," Margaret replied, tone honeyed yet cruel. People talk, you know. They think she's a charity case, living off your father's money while your health struggles make her look like some opportunist. Jack's small body trembled. Emma's chest ached with rage and heartache. She slid to the floor beside the recorder, careful not to knock it. Her free hand rose to wipe her eyes. She knew she couldn't remain silent any longer. Margaret stood, clearly oblivious to the potential consequences of her words. She smoothed her coat and announced, "Well, I'll leave you to your stew. Call me if you need anything, darling." With that, she swept out the door, leaving Jack clutching his coloring book, tears wetting the pages. As soon as the lock clicked behind her mother-in-law, Emma scooped Jack into her arms. "Sure, it's okay," she whispered, voice shaking. "Grandma's words were mean, but they don't define you." Jack buried his face against her shoulder. Emma lifted her phone and quickly played back the recording. Margaret's every disparaging phrase echoed in the tiny speaker. Too busy with her little pottery show, people think she's a charity case opportunist. Emma pressed the screen to stop the playback. She rose, cradling Jack, and headed into her bedroom. Closing the door, she set him on the bed with a comforting pat. "I'm going to make some hot cocoa, okay?" she said, voice firmer now. Jack nodded, wiping his nose on his sleeve. Emma stepped into her home office, phone and recorder in hand. Her reflection in the window marked 2 tear-streaked cheeks and a set jaw. She opened the voice recorder app on her phone and transferred the file instantly. Then she took a deep breath and began transcribing Margaret's words line by line into a secure document labeled Evidence, Margaret Reed. With each typed line, she felt the weight of injustice transform into unassailable proof. No longer were the rumors or insults mere whispers behind closed doors. They were captured forever in precise, undeniable detail. Emma saved the file to the cloud and backed it up on a flash drive labeled Do Not Delete. She exhaled, chest tight but steady. "We're one step closer, Jack," she murmured to the empty room. She pictured Margaret's face when confronted with her own words, and a flicker of triumph warmed her resolve. Pushing the recorder aside, Emma gathered herself. The stew in the kitchen had gone cold, and darkness had settled outside. She returned to Jack's side with 2 mugs of steaming cocoa topped with marshmallows. He sniffed and managed a weak smile. "Thanks, Mom." Emma wrapped an arm around him. "You're safe now. Tomorrow we'll show them this." She pointed to her phone. "Proof changes everything." Jack nodded, eyes heavy with sleep. As he drifted off, Emma sat beside him, phone in hand, heart pounding with a fierce certainty. Tonight, she had become the guardian of her son's dignity, and no amount of cruelty could ever erase that. The aftermath of the ADN confrontation left Emma restless. Even after securing the proof, she needed to vindicate little Jack. An ache lingered in her chest, an unspoken suspicion that drove her late into the night, poring over Daniel's half-hearted apologies and Margaret's stony silence. She was determined not to miss anything. Every late notification, every furtive glance at her phone, every whispered excuse from her ex-husband now carried the weight of potential betrayal. It began with a text alert. Emma had grown accustomed to business-related pings from her inventory system and fan messages from her live stream. But this notification, arriving at 2:03 a.m., displayed Daniel's name. She fumbled her phone from the bedside table, illuminated by her anxiety rather than genuine curiosity. The message preview read simply, "Can you help me tonight?" Her thumb hovered over the notification. She hadn't spoken to him in nearly 2 days since the hospital. He claimed to be busy reorganizing the Chicago showroom at Reed & Company. But Emma's instincts told her otherwise. She silenced the message without opening it and pushed her pillow over her ear. But sleep did not come. Instead, a knot twisted in her gut. She remembered the tiny voice recorder she'd borrowed from Margaret's purse. Alongside Jack's painful admissions, she had that tool to back her up. Now, Emma needed answers about Daniel himself. The next morning, she messaged her friend and former colleague, investigative reporter Ava Morgan. Ava lived for a story and had an uncanny knack for digging into digital footprints. Emma braced herself as Ava replied within the hour. Meet at Willow Cafe?
11 Uhr morgens.
I'll bring what I've found. Willow Cafe was a cozy spot halfway between Emma's studio and the old Reed and Company offices, a perfect neutral zone. At 10:50, Emma pushed through the cafe's double doors. The smell of roasted beans mingled with the clatter of cups. Ava sat in a corner booth, laptop open. Her signature oversized sunglasses perched atop her head. "Morning," Ava said softly, shutting the laptop. Her eyes were grave. "Did you find anything?" Emma sat, brushing stray hair from her face. Ava took a deep breath. "I set up keyword alerts on his main email and Slack account. Emails forwarded to his phone, access logs from company calendars, travel bookings. I found some odd entries." She slid the laptop across the table. On the screen was a series of Slack messages timestamped past midnight. Messages between Daniel and someone listed only as OC. Emma's blood ran cold. Ava pointed. "DC, 12:47 a.m. Hey, can we meet tonight? I need to finalize plans." OC, 12:49 a.m. Of course. My place or yours? DC, 12:50 a.m. Mine is still under Reno.
Jour 1734 en Burlin. Oh.
C, 12:51 a.m. I'll be there. Bring the backup USB. Emma's mind raced. N. Burling wasn't their shared condo. Reed and Company owned an investment property there. And backup USB? The phrase felt ominous. Ava continued. I cross-checked his calendar. He did not log into any corporate servers from home that night. He was codenamed Business Development Meeting. But there's no record of clients at 1734 and Burling. Emma's throat tightened. So he was with her. Ava nodded. Olivia Carter. That's her desk ID, OC. I pulled her emails and found references to their new venture. She'd asked him to forward presentation decks, marketing strategies, explicit budgets. She scrolled down. OC. March 12th. Great meeting tonight. Let's keep this quiet until we close the Santa Monica condo deal. DC March 13th. Agreed. I'll handle Mama Reed's paperwork. Emma closed her eyes, suppressed a tremor. Mama Reed paperwork. Ava rubbed her temples. The condo in Santa Monica was purchased at Margaret's request. Daniel fronted the money. But he arranged to have the deed in Margaret's name, kept it off the books at their main office. It was meant to be gift, but from context it seems more like a bribe. Emma stared at the table. Memories surfaced of Daniel's calm explanations, reorganizing budgets, streamlining assets. Every excuse now reeked of calculated deception. How long has this been going on? Ava scrolled earlier messages. OC, January 5th. Happy New Year, our little secret. DC, January 5th. Happy New Year indeed. Here's the folder from Reed and Company. OC, January 6th. You're a lifesaver. So it had been months. Emma pinched the bridge of her nose. He's been stealing from me, but worse, lying about us. Ava tapped the table. I also found emails suggesting Olivia helped draft the prenuptial dissolution paperwork. She was key to his plan to isolate you and Jack from assets. Emma's world narrowed. She thought of Jack's tiny hand in hers, the endless medical bills, the exacting budget she maintained by live streaming. She'd once invested her severance into his hospital savings account. Daniel had promised to match it, but now it seemed his promises were as hollow as the porcelain mugs she sold. She nodded bleakly. I need more. Text messages, evidence of the condo. Show me everything. Ava began exporting messages, photos of the property deeds, Nancy Drew, styled digital receipts. Emma sat back, fists clenched. Every proof Ava delivered felt like a hammer blow. But beneath the pain stirred a grim relief. She would no longer be blind to the betrayal, and soon she would have the ammunition to fight back. Over the next week, Emma methodically compiled her dossier. Screen captures of every Slack exchange between Daniel and Olivia. Photocopied deed of the Santa Monica condo, showing Margaret Reed as sole owner. Email threads with marketing budgets earmarked for community outreach, actually used to fund Olivia's side venture. Credit card statements revealing hush money transfers to a private account Olivia controlled. With each piece of evidence, Emma's resolve hardened. Once she had assembled everything, she reached out to her attorney, Victoria Chen, scheduling an urgent meeting. Victoria had guided Emma through the ADN hearing. Now she would spearhead the next legal maneuver. At 8 a.m. the following Tuesday, Emma and Ava made their way to Victoria's office. The glass tower over Lakeshore Drive gleamed in the sunrise. Inside, Victoria waited at a polished conference table, her sharp gaze greeting them. "Emma, Ava, glad you're here," she said. Emma set the thick folder of evidence on the table. Victoria thumbed through it, brow furrowing as she read snippets of incriminating correspondence. "Unbelievable," Victoria murmured. "He's been building a case to deprive you of assets while grooming this other woman. And he used his own mother's name on the deed. Madness." Emma exhaled a shaky breath. "I need to apply for an injunction against asset transfers, freeze the condo deal, and file for full custody and equitable division. I can't let him strip away what little security Jack and I have." Victoria nodded briskly. "We have grounds for fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and alienation of affection, assets transferred without disclosure. We'll petition the Cook County Court for an immediate asset freeze." Ava placed a hand on Emma's arm. "You're not alone in this." Emma's eyes bristled with tears, but her smile was fierce. "Thank you both. I'm done trusting him." As she left the office, Emma felt the weight on her shoulders shift. The betrayal had cut deep, but with truth on her side, she was ready for the next battle. And no matter what Daniel Reed had planned, behind her back or under his mother's name, Emma would ensure nothing was taken from her son again. For Jack's sake, she would expose every lie. Walking out into the bright Chicago morning, Emma raised her chin. The road ahead would be long and litigious, but she felt stronger, resolute to reclaim her family's future. And with each step, her heart echoed that defiant promise, "I will not be silenced. Not this time." Emma arrived at the Drake Hotel just before dawn's first light, the grand facade gleaming amid leafless oaks lining Michigan Avenue. The plan she'd conceived over sleepless nights was audacious. A three-way business meeting that would, within a single hour, expose Daniel Reed and Olivia Carter's entire scheme. If executed flawlessly, the truth would ignite across headlines and social feeds alike, ushering in the downfall of her ex-husband's betrayal. Step 1. The Phantom Company. A week ago, Emma had incorporated a new entity, Hayes Consulting Group, LLC, with herself listed as sole member. The name was innocuous, professional. The stated mission, strategic marketing partnerships for mid-sized manufacturers. In reality, Hayes Consulting existed solely on paper, just enough legitimacy to book a conference room at the Drake and negotiate a lucrative, long-term contract with Reed and Company via intermediaries. Emma's friend Ava, posing as Rebecca Sloan from Hayes's Chicago office, fielded phone calls, drafted proposals, and convinced Olivia that this was a golden marketing opportunity, complete with a multi-million-dollar spend. Step 2. The invite. 2 weeks prior, Olivia received a sleek invitation. Hayes Consulting Group
Cordially invites
Reed and Company and Olivia Carter Media to discuss a strategic partnership. On April 17th, 9 a.m., at the Drake Conference Room Victoria, Daniel and Olivia, excited by the prospect, especially Olivia, whose career was stagnating, timed the reading of this invitation so that Emma would not be caught conspiring. Daniel RSVP'd immediately. Step 3. The setup. On the evening before the meeting, Emma, Ava, and attorney Victoria Chen coordinated details. Victoria would arrive early to position herself at the head of the long mahogany table, ostensibly to meet with Daniel about corporate legal compliance. Ava, in her Rebecca Sloan persona, would appear mid-morning with projections on her laptop and a USB drive containing the marketing deck. Emma would slip into the back of the room, disguised in a tailored blazer and glasses, recording on her phone. The bait, a password-protected PDF named Hayes_Reed_Santa Monica_proposal that, when accessed, Redirected to a looping video montage of Olivia and Daniel's Slack messages, the scanned condo deed listing Margaret Reed, and snippets from her secret recording of Margaret's insults. Step 4. The meeting begins. At precisely 9 a.m., the conference room lights brightened. The Drake's Victoria room, with its cityscape windows and cream-carpeted floor, exuded old-world luxury. Emma lingered by the door as Ava, Rebecca Sloane, ushered Daniel inside. "Mr. Reed, Miss Carter," Ava said, extending a polished hand. "Thank you for meeting with me." Her accent was courteous Midwestern, her poise unflappable. Daniel returned the handshake, grinning. Olivia's eyes sparkled. This was shaping up to be a landmark deal. Victoria chin materialized at the head of the table. "Good morning," she said pleasantly, greeting Daniel and Olivia. To them, she was a Reed and Company corporate attorney, verifying agreement terms. Step 5. The presentation. Ava clicked her remote. A slide titled 2025 Strategic Expansion, Reed and Hayes, illuminated the screen. Graphs soared, forecasts glittered. Daniel nodded. Leaning forward, Olivia jotted notes. Mid-presentation, Ava's tone sharpened. "We've allocated an initial ad spend of $2.5 million, but then paused, as if noticing a glitch. She clicked again. Instead of the next graph, the screen flickered to Olivia and Daniel's Slack exchange. "OC, January 5th. Congrats on getting the deed. Margaret will sign at noon. DC, January 5th. All set. No one will suspect it's not a gift." Gasps erupted. Olivia's face blanched. Daniel's jaw froze. Victoria maintained a neutral mask, but Emma saw her eyes flash, relief that legal cover was in place. Before Olivia could scramble for control, slide after slide cycled. Scanned condo deed showing Margaret Reed as sole owner of a Santa Monica property, purchase price, $1.2 million. Email thread between Olivia and Daniel discussing earmarked budget lines under community outreach that funded Olivia's personal venture. Phone audio clip. Margaret's own voice insulting Jack as some tubed charity case, confirming Emma's secret recording was genuine. Emma watched from the back, heart pounding as the room's charged tension built to a crescendo. Daniel's face burned scarlet. Olivia stared mortified. The other corporate guests, partners and investors, were equally stunned, murmuring among themselves. Step 6. The fallout. Olivia sprang up. This is a mistake," she stammered. "That deck." Ava cut her off crisply. "No mistake. These files were embedded in the original proposal, which you all downloaded." She pressed a key. The renamed file, Hayes_Reed_Santa Monica_proposal, PDF, opened, looping the damning video. "Your secret is out." Victoria rose calmly from her chair. "I trust you realize the legal implications here. Fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, corporate theft. This is more than unethical. It's criminal." She cocked her head at Daniel. "Mr. Reed, do you have anything to add?" Daniel's mouth opened and closed, but no words came. Olivia sank into her seat, eyes brimming with tears. Emma stepped forward, removing her blazer to reveal her identity. "You thought you could hide behind my ex's company, behind my mother-in-law's name. But I am Emma Hayes. And these," she lifted the flash drive Ava handed her, "are the receipts of every deceit." Step 7. Aftermath. Within minutes, whispers rippled through the hotel's conference area. Phones came out, influencers filmed snippets, and Reed and Company. PR reps scrambled to issue statements. Daniel found himself cornered, the color draining from his face as business partners exchanged guarded glances. Ava approached Emma, discreetly slipping her a text. "You were brilliant." Emma nodded, a powerful surge of vindication flooding her veins. In that moment, the elegant room felt like a stage set aflame by truth. Emma saw Daniel and Olivia slump in defeat as the spectacle unfolded before reporters. The high-stakes meeting designed to celebrate a growth partnership had instead become their public reckoning. Step 8. Victory and resolve. By the time Emma stepped into the crisp midday air, the deed was done. Reed and Company's shares were already wavering, headlines branding the Reed family scandalous. And social media hashtags #Reed revealed and #Hayes exposed trending nationwide. Emma hugged Ava tightly on Michigan Avenue. "We did it." Ava grinned, hands on hips. "Justice served, and your son's name is cleared forever." Emma placed a hand over her heart. "Now we move forward. For Jack." As they walked away from the Drake, Emma's steps felt lighter. The past weeks of anger, betrayal, and sleepless nights had culminated in this moment, a reckoning that would protect her son and redefine her future. She glanced at the cloudless Chicago sky and raised her chin. Light gleamed on Lake Michigan's horizon. The storm had passed, and Emma Hayes stood ready to rebuild, undaunted and unbroken. The morning of the hearing arrived like a storm over Lake Michigan, gray clouds scudding across the sky, wind whipping the storefronts of downtown Chicago. Emma Hayes stepped out of her car onto Randolph Street and squared her shoulders against the chill. Today was the day she would face Daniel Reed and his attorney in Cook County Circuit Court, and she was ready. Inside the courthouse's marble-lined rotunda, Emma checked in with her lawyer, Victoria Chen, and took a deep breath. The polished wood of courtroom 2107 felt imposing, but Emma's resolve burned brighter than any oak panel. She clutched her thick file of evidence, DNA results, recordings of Margaret's cruelty, email and Slack transcripts documenting Daniel's betrayal and financial manipulations. Across the room, Daniel sat with his counsel. His posture was tight, eyes darting to Emma as if he'd rather not see her. Olivia Carter hovered near the gallery's back row, her expression a mask of shame mixed with hurt. Emma barely registered them. Her focus was on one person, Jack, who waited anxiously with his maternal grandfather in the green room outside. Foreman's gavel struck. Judge Michelle Alvarez, known for her fairness and strict courtroom management, entered. The dozen spectators settled. Attorneys rose. Case 24, D. 1572, Hayes v. Reed, announced the clerk. Emma and Victoria rose together on one side, Daniel and his attorney, Jonathan Price, on the other. Judge Alvarez nodded. "Ms. Hayes, Mr. Reed, thank you. We are here on your dissolution of marriage petition and related custody and asset division matters. To start, Ms. Chen." Victoria stood, voice steady. "Thank you, Your Honor. We respectfully request, first, that the court grant Emma Hayes sole legal and physical custody of Jackson Hayes due to the clear and documented emotional harm he has suffered at his father's home. Second, we request equitable division of marital assets, specifically the condominium in Santa Monica, and restitution for misappropriated funds transferred without disclosure." Jonathan Price rose, clearing his throat. "Your Honor, while we acknowledge some strained family dynamics, Mr. Reed maintains that Jackson is his son, and Mr. Reed is prepared to share joint custody. We also dispute allegations of improper asset transfers. Those deeds and budgets were provided in good faith. We ask the court to consider shared custody and equitable division as prescribed by Illinois law." Judge Alvarez nodded. "Very well. Ms. Hayes, please proceed with your presentation of evidence." Emma stood, stomach fluttering like trapped birds, and crossed to the evidence table. She handed the DNA report to the clerk, then swapped for the flash drive containing Margaret's recording, the Slack transcripts, and the condo deed. Victoria organized them. Folder 1, Custody Evidence. Folder 2, Asset Misappropriation. Victoria guided Emma gently. "Ms. Hayes, would you please describe the impact on Jackson when he was subjected to your mother's insults?" Emma inhaled and spoke clearly. "Your Honor, on February 3rd, my mother-in-law told our 6-year-old son that he was a charity case and an opportunist magnet because of his dialysis treatments. I recorded her voice that day, here." Emma pressed play. Margaret's smug, insulting voice played. "Your mother's pottery show is a charity racket. You're just a tubed baby who embarrasses her." The courtroom hush deepened. Emma's eyes glistened as she continued. "That day, Jack cried for 2 hours. He asked me if it was his fault he was sick, if it meant he wasn't truly a Hayes. A child who needs monthly dialysis deserves protection, not ridicule. Judge Alvarez leaned forward. Thank you, Ms. Hayes. That recording is admitted. She tapped her gavel. Mr. Reed, your response? Daniel rose slowly, voice strained. Your Honor, Margaret Reed's words, while hurtful, were never intended for Jackson's ears. This was a private conversation taken out of context. Victoria interjected, Your Honor, the context is that Margaret Reed is a custodial adult who repeated these insults directly in front of children at school. That is psychological abuse. Judge Alvarez made a note. She then turned to Daniel. Mr. Reed, did you attempt to protect your son from these comments? Daniel glanced at his lawyer, then back at Emma. He swallowed. I did confront my mother, but Emma insisted on involving her lawyers instead of speaking to her privately. I regret that Jackson heard those things. Judge Alvarez let the statement stand. She summoned the custody evaluator next, a social worker named Diana Morales, who had interviewed both parents and Jack. Ms. Morales described Jack's anxious attachment to Emma, his frequent tantrums at Daniel's apartment, and his physical symptoms, headaches, stomachaches, coinciding with visits to Margaret's home. At all interviews, Morales concluded, Jackson expressed fear of being unloved. He stated, If Daddy's mommy doesn't like me, does Daddy not like me? This is classic separation anxiety exacerbated by emotional conflict. It is in Jackson's best interest to reside primarily with his mother. Emma's chest tightened as she glimpsed Jack's framed drawing of their pottery livestream on the gallery wall. She wished she could reach through the wood and wrap him in her arms. Finally, Judge Alvarez called Victoria back. Ms. Chun, please address the asset division issue. Evidence of misappropriation. Victoria stepped to the lectern, opening the folder. Your Honor, Mr. Reed diverted approximately $1.2 million to purchase a condo in Santa Monica, deeded exclusively in his mother's name. He used corporate funds allocated for community outreach to finance Ms. Carter's personal marketing consultancy. She projected the scanned deed onto the court screen. Grantor, Daniel Reed. Grantee, Margaret Reed. Amount, $1,200,000. Recording date, January 15, 2025. Next. She displayed Slack transcripts echoing their conversation. OC, January 5th. Congrats on the deed. Margaret will sign off this afternoon. DC, January 5th. Perfect. No one suspects it's more than a gift. And email exchanges. DC, February 12th. The community outreach line item has been reallocated. Olivia, use code 47 for your startup's expenses. Victoria's voice was cold and precise. Mr. Reed knowingly misused corporate assets to benefit Ms. Carter and shielded these transactions from Ms. Hayes. This violates fiduciary duty and fails to qualify as marital or legitimate business expense. Price rose in protest. Your Honor, those are creative accounting methods used industry-wide. Victoria cut in. Your Honor, but they were undisclosed to Ms. Hayes, exclusively hidden. That is fraud. Judge Alvarez studied the projected evidence, then nodded gravely. I believe there is clear and convincing evidence of asset diversion. This court will freeze the Santa Monica property, and it will be included in the marital estate subject to division. Emma exhaled, relief flooding her. The financial security she'd painstakingly built, only to be undermined, would be restored. The ruling. After hours of testimony, Judge Alvarez delivered her decision. In the matter of Hayes versus Reed, the court finds Ms. Hayes shall have sole physical and legal custody of Jackson Hayes. Mr. Reed shall have reasonable visitation, to be supervised in the mother's presence. The condominium in Santa Monica is hereby included in the marital estate. All title interests are frozen pending equitable distribution. Mr. Reed is ordered to reimburse Ms. Hayes $650,000 for misappropriated funds within 30 days. Jack, seated with Emma's father in the gallery, looked up wide-eyed as their names were called. He clutched Emma's hand for reassurance. Emma released a slow breath as Judge Alvarez concluded, Court is adjourned. The gavel's echo was thunderous and final. Emotions in the aftermath. Emma sank into Victoria's arm, tears leaking from relief and exhaustion. Daniel slumped in his chair, face ashen. Olivia darted her eyes, but offered no comfort. The courtroom cleared around them. Valet attendants led Emma and Jack to the car. As they drove down Michigan Avenue, skyscrapers blurred past Golden through tears. Jack perched on the center console, licking an ice cream cone Emma had promised. "Mom," he said softly, "is everything okay now?" Emma brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. "Yes, baby. You're safe. Daddy still loves you, but you and I are our own team, always." Jack grinned, eyes bright. "Team Hayes?" "Team Hayes," Emma affirmed, kissing his cheek. Behind them on the pavement, Daniel watched through his tinted windshield as mother and son drove away. His reflection fractured across rain-slicked streets. For the first time, he faced the full weight of his betrayals. Emma held Jack's hand as they disappeared into the fractured morning sunlight, her fierce promise realized. She had secured her son's future and reclaimed her dignity in the halls of justice. The next chapter of their lives stretched before them, unwritten, but firmly under Emma's stewardship. The pale winter sun filtered through the tall windows of Mercy General Hospital's transplant ward, its weak light catching the gentle rise and fall of Jackson Hayes's chest. 2 weeks had passed since Jack's kidney transplant, a life-saving gift from an anonymous donor family, and every day brought new triumphs. Today, as Emma stood beside his bed, she watched the smallest of gestures radiate strength. Jack's finger tracing the edge of his hospital blanket, his bright brown eyes flicking up to hers, a shy smile breaking through. "Hey there, champ," Emma whispered, smoothing his tousled hair. "Ready for your big milestone today?" Jack nodded, exactly like the dependable partner he had become. At 7 years old, he'd endured more challenges than most adults, yet his spirit remained unbroken. Emma braced herself for the nurse's entrance, knowing that Jack's progress, his steadily improving creatinine levels, his increased appetite, his ability to walk the hallway, heralded not just medical success, but the dawn of a new life. "Morning, Jackson," Nurse Miller greeted, checking his foreline. The nurse's warm smile belied the clinical efficiency in her touch. "Your vitals look great. Dr. Patel will be in soon to clear you for discharge planning." Jack's grin widened. "I get to go home?" "Later today," Miller confirmed. "We'll do some final labs, then you and your mom can head back. No school tomorrow, though, doctor's orders." Emma exhaled, relief flooding her chest. She exchanged a grateful glance with the nurse as the cart rattled away. Turning to Jack, she lifted him into a gentle hug. "Home soon," she murmured. "I've missed that old couch." Jack giggled. "And my toy race cars." Once Dr. Patel arrived and gave his final clearance, the ward buzzed with quiet celebration. Emma signed discharge papers, collected the prescriptions, immunosuppressant pills for life, and gathered Jack's favorite blanket and stuffed owl. By mid-afternoon, they were ushered into a wheelchair and wheeled down the sunlit corridor. The city skyline loomed through the windows, a reminder that life awaited beyond these walls. Back at Emma's studio apartment, the air smelled of fresh laundry and ceramic glaze. A cluster of empty pottery molds lined the counter, and on the table stood an impromptu "Welcome Home" sign crafted by Emma's friends and neighbors. Balloons bobbed cheerfully. Jack stepped through the door, eyes shining, then raced to the kitchen where a platter of pancakes, his favorite blueberry recipe, waited. Emma watched him devour them, a sense of absolute wonder settling over her. That evening, after Jack collapsed into bed with his owl plush and drifted into a peaceful sleep he hadn't known in years, Emma sat at her ceramic wheel. In the soft glow of her desk lamp, she began molding clay into a new series of phoenix vases, a concept reflecting rebirth and resilience. Each curve carried a layer of symbolism, the sturdy base representing foundation, the blossoming silhouette an echo of Jack's recovery, and deliberate impressions etched along the rim to symbolize the challenges they'd overcome. As the wheel spun, Emma's mind rewound through their journey: emergency clinic visits, courtroom battles, the sting of betrayal, and the public unmasking at the Drake.
Tonight, though, that felt like a distant storm.
Instead, she focused on the clay's tactile promise: from raw earth, beauty emerges. And from their trials, a new beginning was rising. Over the next months, Emma and Jack settled into a rhythm that felt both surreal and grounding. Mornings began with gentle stretches by the lakefront trail, Jack in a scooter, Emma jogging alongside for health and peace of mind. Afternoons found them back at Mercy General for follow-ups, where Dr. Patel marveled at Jack's swift immune tolerance to the new kidney. Evenings were reserved for live streams. Emma's Hayes Home Goods channel blossomed from a makeshift solo operation to a mini production studio, complete with ring lights, multiple camera angles, and a rotating team of local artisan mothers. Emma's viewer count soared from 500 to 50,000 over 3 months. Each Friday, she hosted Family Night Live, where Jack joined her on camera to unbox new glazes or present his favorite books. Their rapport, warm, unforced, genuine, resonated deeply with audiences. Fans wrote in with their own stories of medical hardship and parental determination, forging an online community bonded by empathy and hope. As demand grew, Emma recruited 2 full-time assistants: Carla, a former nurse who handled production schedules and packaging, and Malik, a young graduate in digital marketing who managed inventory and social media. They worked from a bright warehouse studio in Pilsen, where sunlight streamed through industrial windows onto shelves stacked with handmade ceramics. The space buzzed with laughter and collaboration as they painted pieces, recorded product close-ups, and packed orders to mail across the country. Within 6 months, Hayes Home Goods landed a wholesale deal with Urban Craft Market, a well-known boutique in Lincoln Park. The store's sleek glass walls displayed Emma's Phoenix vases alongside local woodworkers and jewelry artisans. Each sale directly funded Jack's ongoing medical care and their growing living expenses. Best of all, Emma felt a protective pride. She'd built this enterprise from zero, fueled by love and necessity. One crisp Saturday morning, Emma stood in front of a podium at Northwestern University's Henry Crown School of Business, invited to speak at a conference for female entrepreneurs. The packed lecture hall brimmed with ambitious professionals and students. Emma's heart pounded, not from fear, but the poignant gravity of her story's transition from private nightmare to public inspiration. She began, "I never imagined I'd be here. A year ago, my kitchen table doubled as a legal war room, and my toddler's kidney failure dominated every waking moment. Today, Jack runs errands for me. He fetches glaze, pulls the kiln tray, and encourages me to keep going, Mom." From heartbreak to triumph, the journey taught me one vital lesson: adversity can either break you or become the clay from which you rebuild yourself. The audience erupted into applause. Emma shared anecdotes: the shock of discovering Daniel's betrayal, the empowering sting operation at the Drake, Jack's miraculous recovery, and the lessons gleaned from every tear. She offered practical takeaways: leverage your story to connect authentically with customers. Build a support network: family, friends, professionals. No one succeeds alone. Balance the personal and professional by creating transparent boundaries. Embrace failure as a catalyst for creativity. Her voice faltered only once, when she mentioned Jack's perfect first-grade spelling test after the transplant. Even now, revisiting that victory brought tears. But she channeled that vulnerability into strength, leaving the stage to a standing ovation. In the months that followed, Emma's profile soared. The Chicago Tribune featured her in 25 Innovators to Watch, highlighting her transition from freelancer to CEO. Ceramic Quarterly published an article on her Phoenix series as a symbol of contemporary American resilience. Hayes Home Goods launched an online workshop series, Clay and Courage, teaching viewers not only pottery techniques but also lessons on perseverance and self-care. Proceeds funded organ transplant charities and support groups for families of pediatric patients. Domestically, Emma and Jack moved into a larger townhome in Bucktown, chosen for its proximity to top-grade schools and a supportive neighborhood. The new home boasted a dedicated workspace with floor-to-ceiling shelves for her ceramics, a cozy reading nook for Jack, and a backyard patio where they hosted weekend gatherings for friends and extended family, now including a more contrite Margaret Reed, who'd come to apologize and support Jack's health journey, albeit tentatively. Emma's relationship with Daniel settled into a civil co-parenting arrangement. He kept his court-ordered visits but, for the first time, respected Emma's lead. He paid child support promptly and offered a nod of acknowledgement at Jack's birthday party, an awkward but genuine step forward. Throughout it all, Emma guarded her heart. The scars of betrayal were real, but she refused to be defined by them. Instead, she stitched every painful memory into her life's tapestry, transforming heartbreak into graffito-like layers of texture and color, evidence that beauty often emerges from adversity. The pinnacle of Emma's transformation unfolded on one humid July afternoon. The local PBS station invited her to appear on Chicago Stories, a show celebrating community resilience. Seated on a red couch in a bright studio, Emma and Jack reminisced about their journey. The host asked, "Emma, what advice would you give to anyone watching who feels stuck by circumstances beyond their control?" Emma smiled, glancing at Jack's eager face. She took his hand. "Lean into your purpose. For me, that was my son. But it could be any catalyst, your passion, a friend, an idea. When you align your actions with that purpose, obstacles become stepping stones. And remember, no one thrives in isolation. Build your team, friends, mentors, or even strangers who believe in you. Then watch what you can create together." Jack piped in, "And always wash your hands after playing with mud." The audience laughed, and Emma squeezed his hand, pride flooding her. As the credits rolled on the broadcast, Emma slipped away to her studio. The clay wheel stood waiting, now half-covered to stay moist. She admired the shelves lined with vases, mugs, and bowls, each one a testament not only to her artistry, but to her indomitable spirit. Outside, the city lights glimmered on the lake, a constellation mirrored on still water. Emma closed the studio door, inhaled deeply, and whispered, "We made it, Jack." Leaning against the solid wood, she allowed herself a rare, unguarded moment of contentment. Together, mother and son walked toward home, toward dinner plans, storybooks, and bedtime rituals. Another day of challenges awaited, but now Emma knew she had the strength, community, and vision to meet them. From the darkest depths of betrayal and heartbreak, she and Jack had risen, resilient, creative, triumphant. And as Emma laid her head on the pillow that night, she dreamt not of battles past but of endless possibilities ahead, new glaze recipes, upcoming speaking engagements, and the laughter of a healthy boy who, against every odd, had been given a second chance at life. Her journey was far from over, but her wings were strong, and she was ready to fly. A soft spring rain pattered against the windows of Mercy General Hospital's outpatient lobby, casting rippling reflections across the tiled floor. 2 years had passed since Jackson Hayes's life-changing transplant, and today, Emma had received a call she never imagined. Margaret Reed, Jack's grandmother and Emma's former adversary, had been admitted overnight with a minor stroke. The medical team believed she was stable, but her presence here represented a final crossroads. Would Emma embrace forgiveness or cling to past wounds? Emma parked her Subaru in the covered garage and took a deep breath. Jack sat beside her in his booster seat, clutching the stuffed owl that had comforted him through countless hospital visits. 7 years old now, he'd matured into a gentle, perceptive child, aware, as any child is, of the complexities of adult relationships. He turned to his mother. "Mom, are you going to see Grandma?" Emma hesitated, recalling the sharp words that once wounded Jack so deeply. Yet therapy sessions and time had taught her the power of empathy. She smiled and ruffled his hair. "Yes, buddy. We're here to see her." Inside the sunlit lobby marked by fountains of gently cascading water, Emma approached the nurse's station. The young RN looked up with sympathy. "Ms. Hayes? Mrs. Reed's room is 312. She's awake but drowsy." Physical therapy insists gentle visitation only. Emma nodded. Thank you. She led Jack down a quiet corridor lined with pastel paintings. Each step felt surreal, the same hospital where Jack's life had been saved now holding the woman who once tormented him. Emma swallowed and knocked lightly on room 312's frosted glass door. A hushed come-in followed. Emma pushed open the door, and there lay Margaret Reed propped in crisp white sheets, hair tousled, face drawn but eyes brightening at their arrival. She attempted a smile, but winced at a small drape across her arm. Jack squeezed Emma's hand. Emma took a steadying breath and moved to Margaret's bedside. Hi, Mom, she said softly. Margaret's gaze flicked to Jack, then back to Emma. Emma, she croaked, voice frail but earnest. Thank you for coming. Jack perched on a nearby chair, offering his stuffed owl. Margaret's eyes softened. And thank you, my little man, she whispered, patting the owl. Emma swallowed the swirl of memories, every insult, every courtroom clash, and spoke carefully. I've heard from Dr. Patel you're recovering well. I'm glad you're safe. Margaret's lips trembled. I have so much to say, so many things
I'm sorry.
She closed her eyes as tears slipped down her cheeks. I was wrong to speak those cruel words. I thought I was protecting you both, Jack's health, my son's career, but I ended up hurting my grandson and betraying you. Emma's chest tightened. She glanced at Jack, who looked back with tentative compassion. Slowly, Emma sat on the bed's edge and took Margaret's hand. Your words wounded Jack deeply, she acknowledged. Seeing him cry, I promised I'd protect him from anything, even you. Margaret's tears fell harder. I see that now. She turned to Jack, voice quavering. Jackson, sweetheart, will you forgive Grandma? Jack's brow furrowed, but after a long moment he nodded. I forgive you, Grandma, but I hope you don't say those things again. Margaret reached out and gently brushed Jack's cheek. Never again, she promised. Then, tentatively, she looked at Emma. Emma, can you forgive me, too? Emma paused, glancing at her son's trusting expression, remembering the dark hours she spent gathering evidence against Margaret. She realized that holding on to resentment would only perpetuate pain. I forgive you, Emma said, her voice soft but resolute. She slipped her hand into Margaret's. We're family. We'll move forward, together, for Jack. A fragile peace settled in the small hospital room. Margaret laid her head back against the pillow, tears still glistening. Jack pressed his stuffed owl into her arms, and she cradled it like a talisman of new beginnings. Weeks later, the Reed, Hayes family gathered at Emma and Jack's new townhome in Bucktown. The cherry blossoms were in full bloom, petals drifting like confetti across the patio. Emma had organized a recovery celebration, a barbecue for neighbors and friends, with a table dedicated to ceramic pieces painted by Jack, each a miniature phoenix rising from clay. Margaret arrived in a borrowed wheelchair, her arm now in a supportive brace, but her spirit unbroken. Daniel joined them, carrying a platter of herbed grilled vegetables. Olivia Carter, too, appeared, invited at Emma's request as an olive branch. Although their reconciliation with Daniel and Olivia remained tentative, Emma believed in offering gestures of goodwill. Jack steered Margaret's wheelchair to a brick-paved courtyard where a small pond bubbled amid pebble stones. Emma guided her beside the table displaying Jack's artwork. The courage vase, the hope mug, the forgiveness bowl. Jack beamed as he explained each piece's meaning. Margaret's eyes brimmed with pride. These are beautiful, she murmured, touching the glaze. Just like the sun I tried so wrongly to protect. The neighborhood watched from fold-out chairs, clapping when Jack presented Margaret and Emma with a custom piece he'd made himself, a dove perched atop a smooth ceramic heart. Its inscription read, Our family takes flight together. Margaret studied the dove, tears flowing freely. She kissed Jack's forehead and then embraced Emma in front of the gathered crowd. Emma felt warmth flood her chest, a sense of closure she hadn't permitted herself to believe possible. Later, as the sun dipped below the Chicago skyline, Emma gathered her family by the pond's edge. Daniel slipped an arm around Emma's shoulders, Olivia gave Jack a gentle high five. Margaret settled in Emma's free arm, leaning in. Emma looked at them all, once fractured by deceit, now tentatively mended. She smiled, thinking of how far they'd come, from courtrooms and clinical wards to this spring celebration filled with hope and renewal. "Thank you," Emma said, voice carrying across the courtyard. "Thank you all for believing in Jack's future and ours." Daniel nodded, eyes solemn. "We will do better." Olivia squeezed Emma's hand. "And I'm grateful for a second chance." Margaret, voice firm despite her injury, added, "No more secrets. This family weathered the storm, and now we'll build something stronger." Jack, perched on a low stone ledge, threw a blossom petal into the water. It floated in concentric circles outward, rippling across the pond, a perfect metaphor for forgiveness and new beginnings. As twilight settled, Emma lifted Jack into her arms. She pressed a kiss to his temple. "Ready to fly, sweetheart?" Jack nodded, drifting to sleep in her arms. Emma carried him toward the porch, where a new chapter awaited, a life defined not by betrayal, but by resilience, unity, and boundless possibility. Together, they walked home beneath the cherry blossoms. The echoes of their trials transformed into the promise of brighter days. And in that final, golden moment, Emma knew their story, once marked by storm and strife, had truly found its peaceful, joyous conclusion. And that brings us to the end of today's story on TrueStory Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.